To begin configuring Jiva's Cloud Change Management application, mouse over your name in the upper right and select Administration. Click the Changes tab and then Basic Setup. Start by reviewing the online training which is posted on our public website. There you'll find a very helpful tour and overview. We encourage you to go through the tour before starting configuration to understand Jiva's capability and gain a big picture perspective. Configuration will then be quick and easy. Use the arrows to navigate through each page, or at the bottom of any page, you can navigate to any other page in the training. Once you have reviewed the tour, return to the Jiva application. Before starting the configuration process, let's look at creating an RFC. On any page, mouse over the blue plus and select RFC. When creating an RFC, this is how it looks out of the box when you start a 30-day trial. And then this is what an RFC looks like out of the box after it's created, which we call Edit Mode. Here is the Summary tab, the Detail tab, the Plans and History tab, and the Wrap-Up tab. Out of the box, there are 29 ITIL-compliant fields in the RFC, but only 9 of them are required. Many customers do not need all 29 fields, and in the configuration process, you can quickly modify how both the Create and Edit RFCs look. Also, most of these 29 fields come with pre-configured defaults for the drop-down menus, and these can be customized as well. Use what makes sense, and you can add or delete as necessary. Returning to creating an RFC, notice that the layout is in rows and columns with a maximum of 3 columns per row. For example, in this row, column 1 is Business Line Manager, column 2 is Priority, and column 3 is Change Category. Most fields only take up 1 column each, but it's important to note that some fields take up more than 1 column. For example, Assets Affected takes up all 3 columns, the Other Customers Affected field takes up 2 columns, and the Description field also takes up 2 columns. Now that we have reviewed the tour and the Create and Edit RFC out-of-the-box forms, let's begin reviewing the configuration process by going back to the administration page. To change the layout of either the Create or Edit RFC form, click RFC Forms. For Create RFC, scroll to the Create section and you'll see all the out-of-the-box fields. Here you can decide which fields to include by entering rows and columns to customize as desired. Note the number to the right, which indicates how many columns the field requires. Let's go through an example by entering in a few row and column numbers. We'll put Priority in row 1 and column 1, Change Category in row 1, column 2, and Business Line Manager in row 1, column 3. Then we'll put Assets Affected in row 2, column 1, remembering that it takes up 3 layout columns as indicated here. Next, we'll put Risk Level in row 3 in column 1, Cost Level in row 3, column 2, and the Implementer in row 3 in column 3. Finally, we'll put the Service Window in row 4, column 1, again noting it takes up 3 full columns. And then we'll click Save. Once saved, at the top of the page, you'll see the customized RFC form fields in their respective rows and columns. If necessary, you can still make changes to this section as well as continue working in the section below to keep customizing the RFC form until it meets your requirements. The next step is to review the Create RFC form to see how your customization work actually impacts the look of an RFC. When creating an RFC, below the mandatory fields like description, you'll see the fields we just configured. Here is row 1 with priority, change category, and the business line manager. Row 2 with the assets affected. Row 3 with the risk level, cost level, and implementer. And finally, in row 4, the service window. Lastly, back on the RFC Forms administration page, you can repeat the same customization process for the Edit RFC form. Now, let's continue with the configuration process. Again, on the administration page, under the Changes tab and Basic Setup tab, click on each of the options to review the out-of-the-box defaults to see if they meet your requirements. Once more, just use what makes sense, and you can add or delete as necessary. For example, let's look at closed codes. Add new items by entering them as a comma-separated list, or make updates to the current list by changing the entries in line. Note that some options have required presets that must be selected as part of the change management workflow, but these also will already have a selected default. Then, when you're finished making changes, click Save. Any new items will be added, and changes will be reflected in the list. Finally, back on the administration page, click on all the remaining steps and review the out-of-the-box options in the same way. And make sure to also review each item under Optional RFC Fields, Popular Setup, and Advanced Setup.